Good afternoon, folks. We're going to start on chapter 15. 15 deals with social stratification. I'm hoping I can get through it in one session, but we'll see. I'll keep an eye on the clock here, but I think I can do it. What I want to emphasize for you on chapter 15 is that when we talk about social stratification, the way to conceptualize it is we're talking about classes and class differences, okay? That we see in the stratification system. And basically we're talking about, we know that people have unequal access to the good things in society and life. And the question is why is that? Why is it that some people have more stuff than others? And why do they lead easier lives than others? What brings that about? In other words, how do we explain the social class system? That's what we're interested in. Now, there have been several theories that have focused on stratification, and the first is somebody that we know and love. Karl Marx was the first guy who talked about stratification, at least in terms of the way we're going to talk about it. And remember that he had the concept of class. And class is determined by the role the individual plays in the productive the process of society, okay? The role the individual plays. In other words, your occupation. What do you do for a living? And so that determines, and we've talked about this, that is a pretty good indicator. Sociologists still use that today. If you know somebody's occupation, generally speaking, you've got a pretty good idea about their income and their educational things. Not always, but you've got a pretty good idea. Oh, that's hot. So since we've talked about him, we're not really gonna dwell on him anymore. But he's first and important and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so he dealt with class. Well, the next guy we're going to talk about, what happened to my cursor? Is a guy named Max Weber. Max Weber. Now, oops. He's German, and so the W is pronounced as a V. If you say Max Weber, nobody's going to know who you're talking about. Max Weber. Weber was writing at about the same time as Marx, middle 19th century, mid to later 19th century. And he had what we call a multidimensional, good night, multidimensional view of stratification. And what this means, Marx has a unidimensional. He's just looking at your class position. But Weber says, wait a second. We've got to talk about more than that. We've got to, in addition to class, we've got status and party. Okay? Class, status, and party. And so class, he agreed with Marx, class is based on the role you play in the productive processes. And class determines life chances. What are your opportunities in life, okay? And it's a function of your class positions, opportunities that you have. Consider this. You guys are going to East Central University. Okay? I went to Southwestern State College. Had we gone to Harvard, our job prospects probably would have been better. I don't know why you didn't go to Harvard, but I didn't even try to go to Harvard because I figured I wouldn't get accepted because it cost too much money. I didn't think I had enough good grades, so I didn't even try, okay? But had I tried, I think my opportunities in life would have been better. I talked to somebody, a friend of mine in Clemson, sent 3 of her 4 kids to Ivy League schools. And I asked her one time about, what did it cost? This is in the 1980s. And it cost $50,000 a kid per year, okay? And I said, how do you justify those expenditures? And she said, oh, you should have seen the job offers they got when they got out. So that is a life chance, okay? And if you're poor, you don't have the same life chances. So that's what we're talking about. So life chances are opportunities in life. When we talk about status, we're talking about social honor. And the best way to conceptualize that is we're asking, to whom do you show deference? To whom do you show deference? And people grant status or social honor to those who have more education, occupational prestige, and income than they do. And flowing from status are lifestyles. So life chances come from class, and that's basically how high on the hog you eat. That's basically your opportunities in life. Social status determines lifestyles. And when we talk about lifestyles, we're talking about how high on the hog you eat. I was getting ahead of myself there for a second. And there's this old saying, a meal is as good as a feast. And what that means is that you can dine on caviar and get full, or you can dine on beanie weenies and get full, okay? You're accomplishing the same goal by eating different things. But when you eat on caviar, when you eat caviar, you're making a statement. Now, I mean, caviar, I'm assuming it's good. I've never had it. Beanie weenies are real good. I've had them. And maybe they're better than caviar, or maybe they're not. But the point is that by eating caviar, you're making a statement, okay? You're telling other people, I've got the money to buy this food, okay? You can drive a Beamer or you can drive a Honda or Civic like I got, okay? And they both run well. They both are safe cars, reliable cars. They have comparable advantages, but when you spend a lot more money on your car, you're making a statement saying, I've got enough money to buy this car, all right? And you're making a statement to other people. It's social honor. It's your lifestyle. It's how high on the hog you live. I saw the other day an SUV. It was a Cadillac SUV, $85,000. $85,000 for that vehicle. And, and I'm sure that it's nice and well appointed, but I can't imagine that it rides any better than my little Civic, okay? And they both will get you to the same spot, same place. So you're just making a statement, all right, with your lifestyle. Okay, so class determines life chances, your opportunities in life, where you've got education you get, your life expectancy, who you're going to marry. Those are all life chances. Status determines lifestyles. And then finally we have party, which determines power. Power. Even the wealthiest people in our society don't have enough money to build, a dam, hydroelectric dam, or an interstate highway system. And so what happens is that people who have a lot of money use that money to acquire power, to get the things that they normally couldn't afford. And you do that through political party affiliation and influence. And the way you gain influence is you give money. Because if you give a politician money, he owes you because you helped him get elected. And so, he needs to satisfy his end of the bargain by granting you special favors. So we've got these three dimensions: class, status, and party. Okay. Another multidimensional view is more of a methodological view, but what we're looking at stratification, and it is called socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status. And what it is comprised of three things: your occupation, your education, and your income. Okay, these three measures. These three things are what you look at, and it's pretty good at determining where you fit in society. Your occupational prestige, what kind of job you got, how much education you have, how much money you make. Now, these three things are really important, and they allow us to place most people in society in terms of their class position. There are some things, though, that are not included in this. And the one thing I can think of that's really important is inherited wealth. Inherited wealth is not reflected in this. And for really, really wealthy people, inherited wealth is a big component. So, but that's not in here. So when we talk about occupation, we're talking about occupational prestige. If I can spell it. Okay, occupational prestige. It may interest you to know that occupations can be rated, not in terms of how much money they make, but just in terms of how cool a job is. Some jobs are seen by members of society as cooler than others. And what's interesting is that there's cross-cultural and longitudinal historical agreement on these. Now, studies have found this out. A really prestigious occupation in our country is medical doctor. Okay, because think of it. I mean, not only do they have a lot of education and make a lot of money, but it's a cool job. You're healing people. You know, it's an interesting kind of work. They know all this stuff about how your body works. It's a cool job. Okay, Supreme Court justice. That's a cool job. You've got a lot of power in that position. You know a lot of stuff. You influence people's lives. That's a very high-ranking occupation. This one will surprise you. College professor is seen as a cool job, okay? And, you know, I mean, we don't make a whole lot of money. We do have a lot of education, but the job itself is seen as a neat job. And I will tell you, I can't think of anything more satisfying than doing what I do. It's a very rewarding career. So all of those occupations rank really high. Let me give you some that are kind of low. A used car salesman. Now, if your dad's a used car salesman, I mean no offense, but it doesn't rank real high, okay? In terms of politician, believe it or not, doesn't rank real high. So you've got some occupations that are not seen as cool jobs. If you're talking about blue collar work, I'll tell you a job that has high prestige is a railroad engineer driving a train. It's toot the whistle. You get to see the backwoods. It's seen as a cool job. And being a shoeshine person, that's seen as not cool. Okay, I'm not blue collar work. So we're talking about occupational prestige. So you can rank jobs in terms of occupational prestige from high to low. It's easy to rank people in terms of education. That's easy, right? Number of years of school and income's the same thing. Well, because we have these three dimensions, this is a multi-dimensional view. Somebody can be high on occupation, education, and income. They can be low on occupation, education, and income, or they can be inconsistent, okay? Well, if they are inconsistent, it's called status inconsistency, okay? And a guy named Gerhard Linsky studied status inconsistency, and he argued that people tend to see themselves in terms of their highest dimension, while others look at them in terms of their lowest dimension. So somebody will, here's an example of somebody who is status inconsistent. Think about a guy who is a wildcatter, okay? He goes out and drills oil wells, and he's got a third-grade education. You know, and his occupational prestige isn't that high, and, you know, his education isn't that high, but he gets the big one, okay? And he's rich. Well, he thinks of himself, and he says, hey, I'm a multimillionaire. But we look at him and say, yeah, but you didn't graduate from the third grade, right? So this imbalance between how we see him and how other people see him puts him in kind of an awkward position. And Linsky argued that people who are status inconsistent suffer from higher rates of social pathology. They're more likely to get divorced, more likely to suffer from alcoholism, suicide, stuff like that. So that was his basic idea. But like a doctor, he's status consistent, right? Because he's high occupational prestige, high education, high income. A shoeshine guy is low, 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 right? So he's status consistent. The inconsistency is when you're at one level on one or more dimensions, and then higher or lower on the third dimension. Okay, you're inconsistent. Okay, there's another theory, and you know what? I'm not doing these the way they are in the notes. There's a functionalist perspective. Functionalist perspective on stratification. And this functionalist theory argues the following. It says, first of all, there's a division of labor in society, and we'd all agree that. You know, it's the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. People do different things for a living. Second point is some jobs are more important for the advancement of society. And that makes sense, right? It's more important to be president of the United States than it is to be a sociology teacher, right? Or it's more important to be head of a large corporation than to work in the corporation. We would all agree with that. And then the third point is, so there's division of labor, some jobs are more important. And the third point is to make sure that the most qualified people do the most important jobs. There's a system of differential rewards. And what that means is people get different amounts of money. So jobs that are more important typically pay more. Jobs that are less important typically pay less. And so the argument is that those jobs that pay more are going to draw more talented people because they want more money. Okay? Now, that's the basic idea. There are a couple of points I'd like to make about this theory. The first is that in the United States, it doesn't really hold up, okay? There are baseball players who make, I don't know, $10 million a year, maybe more, okay? The president makes $400,000 a year. Now, surely we're not going to argue that the second baseman for the New York Yankees is more important than the president of the United States. Yet they might be making 8 times or 10 times as much as the president makes. So it kind of falls apart when you get into specifics in terms of in terms of, I kind of forgot what I was saying here. It kind of falls apart when you're talking about the most important jobs make the most money. We would expect the president to make the most money, and that's not necessarily the case. Another thing we find out when we look at these occupations is that the jobs that we think are most important aren't necessarily that important. Let me give you an example. If we talk about the healthcare delivery system, we think that, oh, doctors are the most important thing, and they make the most money. So this makes sense, right? Well, let me ask you this. What would happen if all the doctors went on strike compared with all the guys who collect your garbage or run the sewer system if they went on strike? Guess what would happen? Okay, well, this has actually happened before. We have some case studies on this. When doctors go on strike, there were doctors at HMO in New York City that went on strike back in the 1970s. The death rates went down. Okay, do you know what the third leading cause of death is in our society? Number 1 is heart disease. Number 2 is cancer. Number 3 is doctors. Okay, and that comes from a study by the Journal of the American Medical Association. Doctors are the third leading cause of death in the United States. Now, they don't want to do that. They're not trying to kill you. It's just that when they practice medicine, they screw up sometimes. They misdiagnose something, write the wrong prescription for something. You die in surgery because of mistakes that they make. Now, these are not intentional mistakes. They don't want people to die. They want their patients to do well. But because of the sensitive nature of what they do, they can make mistakes and they can be life-threatening. Third leading cause of death. So that the death rates actually went down. And here's the way that works. Let's say you got cancer and they say, okay, we need to operate on you. Well, they operate on you and you die in the surgery. Now, you were going to die from the cancer, but you would live a lot longer than if they give you surgery and you die in the surgery. So doctors can kind of accelerate the death rate in that sense. Now, I still go to doctors, and I hope you do too, because they're dedicated to your health. But I'm just saying that they make mistakes, just like every profession does, and it can create problems. So this idea that doctors are the most important cause, I would argue that maybe the sewer guys are the most important. Think about what would happen if the sewer treatment guys went on strike and didn't do it, and you couldn't use the bathroom anymore. What would happen? Well, we would have outbreaks of disease because you're going to use the bathroom. You're just going to go someplace, right? And it's not going to be sanitary, and it's going to spread disease. And it's a problem. So from a societal perspective, probably the most important part of the healthcare system is something that deals with public sanitation, either collecting the garbage or taking care of the sewage. All right? Doctors are more specialized. They're more specialized. They know more stuff. But in terms of basic health care, probably the sewer guys are more important in that regard. So my point is that we've got this theory and it's got some flaws in it, okay? And but it is a functionalist theory and it's been around for quite a long time. One thing that it ignores is power in society. So people are able to make more money if they artificially limit the supply of whatever they provide, and that service is held in high esteem, and there's a big demand for it. So if you can artificially limit supply, if you can artificially limit the number of doctors by limiting admission to medical schools, you can drive up the price of health care, okay? If you can artificially limit the number of workers who can work in a plant by requiring union membership, you can artificially drive up the price of that labor by limiting the supply of that labor. The demand is there, the price goes up. So power is an important factor, and it's not discussed in this theory of functionalist perspective on stratification. Okay, we talked about how society is kind of divided up, and now what we need to do is talk about movement. We need to talk about social mobility. This is an important concept in stratification because we're talking about movement. Movement from one position to another position. Some societies don't promote movement, and they tend to be very inefficient. Because what happens is that sometimes you have some very talented people who want to get ahead, and they can't by virtue of the nature of the system. And it creates a lot of frustration. You're wanting to feed your family, you're wanting to do a better job of it, but you can't because the system won't let you move up. And it's very inefficient because you get incompetent people in important positions and talented people in unimportant positions, and it just doesn't work well. So let's talk a little bit about social mobility. And there's a couple of concepts I need to talk about, and they are these. Okay, first of all, let's talk about from an individual perspective. From an individual perspective and talking about movement in society, you can talk about intergenerational mobility. I misspelled that. And intergenerational is between generations, father to son, okay? So if you are moving up vis-a-vis your parents, then you're experiencing intergenerational mobility. If your dad shines shoes for a living and you're going to be a doctor, then you are going to experience upward mobility, intergenerational mobility. The second one is intra. I like to be able to spell some stuff right occasionally. Intragenerational, mobility. I'll say that and spell that right too. Intragenerational is within the generation. So if you start out as a shoe shine guy and decide, hey, I've had enough of this, I'm going to go to medical school, then and you become a doctor, then you've experienced intra within your generation. You've moved up. So inter, it's easier, okay, to use your folks as a platform for moving up. Intra, it's harder. Some of you are non-traditional students. You've got kids already. You're trying to move up. It's hard. It's hard to deal. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. From the perspective of society, we can talk about three different kinds of societies. We can talk about a class system, societies that have a class system, and a state system, and a caste system. Okay, and here's the difference. A class system, it's an open system. You have a lot of mobility. You can move up or down. We have a class system in the United States. You can be born poor and you can become rich. A lot of people say, oh, we really don't have that opportunity anymore. It's not that great. Let me tell you, next time you're at East Central, I want you to go look at the Harlan Stonecipher School of Business, okay? It's a building that Mr. Stonecipher built. Mr. Stonecipher was the son of a sharecropper. And he ended up with millions and millions of dollars because he was a smart businessman, and he gave some of that to us at East Central. So don't tell me you can't move up. There's a lot of examples of people at East Central who've moved, graduates from East Central who've moved up, and there's some executives at Walmart, executives in other businesses that started out at East Central, and they have moved up and become wealthy. So it does happen, okay? A caste system is a system that is closed. There's no movement. And what this means is that if you are born into a particular caste, it means that your daddy and your daddy's daddy were in the same spot. and your children and your children's children are going to be in the same spot. There's no movement, okay? We think of the caste system of traditional India as a caste system. If you're born a Brahmin, okay, it means that you are born at the top, and no matter how much you screw up, you're going to stay there. And if you're an untouchable, you're at the bottom. And no matter how hard you work, they shovel excrement. No matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you shovel, no matter how hard you work, you're going to be there, your kids are going to be there, and their kids are going to be there. And that's just the way it is. Okay, there's no movement. Now, in traditional India, they put up with this. Usually this is counterproductive in terms of societal stability because people at the bottom, they want change. They want to move up. At least some of them do. And so it creates an unstable society. But in India, it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because they believe in reincarnation. They believe that they deserve to be where they are, and if they work hard in the next life, they'll move up. Okay? And so for them, they experience intergenerational mobility between lives. So they think they have mobility just between lives. In the United States, we're thinking, one shot, I'm moving up in this life, or I'm not moving up in this life. But generally, caste systems are very inefficient. Okay? Now, a state system is in between, and there is small amounts of mobility, but not a whole lot. A good example of that would be like Mexico and actually Latin America. That what happened is that there were large Spanish grants granted by Spanish kings to Spanish families who were white Europeans. They came to Mexico, okay, and they had people working for them. And these people were working these land grants, these large rural areas, and they were their peasants, and the mixed bloods from European and indigenous Indian, the mixed bloods we call Mexicans, and they were the peasants. They worked the land. Then there were those who stayed as native folks. Just as kind of like in Oklahoma, you know, we've got some pure Europeans, we've got some pure Indians, and we've got some mixture, okay? Same kind of thing. And so what happened is that there is this really tiny wealthy class, the Spaniards, there's this great big class of Mexicans, the peasants, and there's this little smaller bottom class indigenous population. It's real hard for people to move up because it's an agrarian economy. Now, Mexico's become industrialized, but if we go back, several generations, it wasn't that way. And so what happens is that there is the only way you're going to move up is to acquire land. Well, the people on the land are wealthy. They have no need to sell the land. It just stays in the family. So you can't move up. So the only way to move up is if you become a priest, if you're a Mexican lad and you become a priest, or you go to law school or medical school. But it's a small middle class. So you have this small upper class, a small middle class, and a great big bottom class, and there's very little movement. Okay. Another thing about mobility that I like to talk about is that there are three different types of mobility. So we talked about three different types of societies, and their stratification system. Now we're going to talk about three different types of mobility, and they are these. I don't know why that doesn't do that. Okay. Three types of societal mobility. Okay. First of all is, get this down. Here we go. Differential. Differential fertility, and I'll just go ahead and spell this out. Technological mobility, and let's see, and immigration. Okay, differential fertility. In industrial societies, the upper class under-reproduces themselves, okay? You know, I think we can get done with this. I've got, I think we've been going about 30 minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna finish up. Okay, differential fertility, the upper classes in industrial societies under-reproduce themselves, okay? And as a consequence, it creates the opportunity for people at the bottom to move up. It's called differential fertility. So you got a guy who owns a tire store, okay? And he's busy with his tire store. He never has kids. He's thinking about retiring. He needs somebody to operate his tire company. So he goes to East Central Business College and says, hey, I need somebody to run my company. And so that gives some kid whose dad, you know, is a laborer. He's gone to East Central, got a college degree, gives him an opportunity to move up. So now he's a business executive. Okay, so that's an example of differential fertility. Technological mobility is this idea. You have the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class. But then with some technological improvements, the whole thing shifts up. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you want to build a bridge or a road or a dam or something, and it's the old days. You get 1,000 guys with shovels, and they're out there digging, okay? And they're doing unskilled work, and they don't get paid very much, all right? There's a technological innovation, a backhoe or a steam shovel or something like that, and it replaces the work of 100 men, okay, or maybe 1,000 men. So now what's happened is you're going to fire all these guys with shovels, or most of them, and what you're going to do is you're going to hire a backhoe operator or a shovel operator, okay, power shovel operator. And there are guys who manufacture the power shovel. There are guys who sell it. There are dealerships for it. There are mechanics for it. You get all of these jobs, and they're all better than being a shoveler, being a laborer. So you eliminate jobs, but you create better paying jobs, newer, better paying jobs. And so it's like the whole thing shifts up. Okay, that's the basic idea, technological mobility. And then finally, we have immigration mobility. People come to the United States and other countries looking for economic opportunity. I mean, some for political asylum, but mainly it's for economic opportunity. So they're coming over here, they're looking for a way up. Well, they typically don't know the language, they're not assimilated, okay? They're not going to start out as CEOs. People are not going to hire them as CEOs when they don't know the language, they don't have an education. So they get the jobs at the bottom. So they come in, and this was true for the Irish, the Germans, the Polish folks, for everybody. Now it's true for like Mexican folks. They come in, they get the jobs at the bottom. And then over their lives, they work hard, maybe start a business, they move up, or more likely their children move up, okay? So let me give you an example. Pedro used to cut my grass in Norman, okay? When I lived in Norman, he'd cut my grass every week. Pedro didn't know English, okay? If I wanted to talk to Pedro, I had to talk to his daughter, and she was like 7th grade. And I'm telling you, I talked to her, and boy, she knows English, all right? She's a smart kid. And so what's going to happen, I promise you, is Pedro has a lawn mowing business. His daughter's not going to cut grass for a living. She's going to go to law school. She's smart, she's pretty, she's articulate. She's going to move up, okay? And then her kids are going to move up. And so what you have is immigration mobility. And we see that time and time again. When the Irish first came in, they worked on the railroads. Their children became cops. Their children became lawyers. Okay, so you just work your way up from generation to generation. It's called immigration mobility. Okay, I think we've done it. I think that's it. And I think we're ready for our test, our third test. So that's it. See you guys later.